Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in welcoming our television and webcast viewers. My name is Fred Mifflin, President of the Canadian Club of Toronto. Viewers, we're very pleased that you are participating with us today. For 120 years, the Canadian Club has been proud to provide a forum for leaders and visionaries in every aspect of society to share their ideas with us and to challenge our thinking. We're committed to providing a welcoming venue for discussion and debate on issues that impact our daily lives. Through our programs and activities, we offer access to dynamic public, business, and political figures from around the world. Today's topic and our guests are a great example. Before I formally introduce them, here's a preview of some of our upcoming events. Next Wednesday, November 16th, the Honourable Brad Dogood, Ontario's Minister of Economic Development and Growth, will be at our podium to discuss his government's plans to drive economic growth in Ontario. And on Friday, November 18th, the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, the Honourable Dwight Ball, will address the challenges facing his province in his plan to deliver sustainable growth in Newfoundland and Labrador. To order your tickets or to learn more about the club, please visit our website at canadianclub.org. You can also join the conversation via Twitter and Instagram by following us at CDNCLUBTO or by using that hashtag. I want to recognize the youth and young leaders with us today from David and Mary Thompson Collegiate Institute, sponsored by TD Financial Group. Welcome and thank you for joining us. And now our special guests. Wolfville, Sherbrooke, Sackville, and Antigonish. What do these small Canadian towns have in common? 4 universities that are reinventing traditional approaches to undergraduate education. The Maple League is an unprecedented alliance formed to address the needs of the 21st century student. Each university, Acadia, Bishops, Mount Allison, and St. Francis Xavier, was founded in the 1800s. Today, they are propelling novel approaches to higher education forward and redefining the value of exceptional undergraduate education. We are delighted that the leaders of these fine universities are here to speak about their alliance. Ray Ivany is the 15th President and Chancellor of Acadia University. He was previously chair of the Workers' Compensation Board of Nova Scotia, and before that, he headed Nova Scotia Community College. Michael Goldbloom is the 18th Principal and Vice Chancellor of Bishops University. In addition to law, he comes from the newspaper business, having served as the publisher of the Toronto Star and the Montreal Gazette. Dr. Robert Campbell is currently serving his second 5-year term as Mount Allison's President and Vice Chancellor. He began his career at Trent University and was Dean of Arts at Wilfrid Laurier University before heading east to Mount A. Dr. Kent MacDonald is the 18th President and Vice Chancellor of St. FX. He's also held senior leadership positions in the private and the not-for-profit sectors. He's worked in education systems here in Canada and in New Zealand. The format of today's session is that Michael Goldbloom, I almost called you Michael Bloomberg. Michael Goldbloom is going to discuss what the Maple League means to these universities and the value to each school. Each of the presidents is going to join us on the stage, and we're happy to take Q&A. You can either put the questions on the Q&A cards on your table, or given the size of the audience and the friendliness of our speakers, they're happy to take questions from the floor. So gentlemen, welcome. The Canadian Club of Toronto's podium is yours. That was a Freudian. Thank you, Fred.
sit there, yeah. So thank you, Fred, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for your interest in this rather unique project that we've undertaken. So I drew the short straw. So Robert and Ray and Ken and I have asked me if I would give you an overview about why we came together, what we've accomplished, and what we aspire to do. But we were all going to participate in the discussion at the end. I'd like to start by noting that this is a new experience for the four of us and for our four institutions. Our four universities are accustomed to competing with each other for students and faculty. Our sports teams and their fans are impassioned rivals, and each of us regularly claims to offer the best undergraduate experience in Canada. And you know, of course, in the case of Bishops, that's true. So we created what we called at the time the U4 League 3 years ago, because we believed that by working together, we could enhance the experiences of our students. We believed that together we could be more effective at explaining our model of undergraduate education to prospective university students throughout the country. Now, we quickly realized that despite our friendly rivalries, there is in fact much more that we share in common than divides us. What are some of those things? Well, we all have 4,500 students or fewer, which is very rare in the university system in Canada. So we are all able to provide intimate learning environments in which students have significant and regular interactions with their professors and with each other. We are all residential universities, so the vast majority of our students live on or within immediate walking distance of our campus. And we are all committed to undergraduate education. Over 90% of our students are undergraduates. And finally, we're national universities. So more than 40% of our students come from out of province. And we all have students from every province and every territory. And in fact, the world meets on these small campuses. We have more than 60 countries represented on virtually every one of our campuses. So students are coming together and meeting fellow Canadians from other parts of the country, in many cases whose first language is different than their own, and they're meeting and living with students from all around the world. And as Fred pointed out in his introduction, we are all in small towns. What part of the result of that is that our students are able to become very involved in the local communities, and they're able to contribute to them. In fact, I think we all feel that with each new generation of students that arrives on our campus, not only do they get to invent what our university is going to be, but also they have an enormous impact on what the local communities are. So we created the U4 in response to what was evident to us of a growing concern expressed by students, by parents, by educators, by media commentators about the deterioration of undergraduate education in Canada. The funding models for Canada's universities provide enormous, I would say almost irresistible incentives to grow your enrollment, to get bigger and bigger, particularly at the undergraduate level, while at the same time dedicating your resources to graduate students. So that's the reality of the financial model, and many universities in Canada, facing the challenges that come with running public institutions, many universities in Canada have, the way that they've chosen to address those challenges has been to increase their undergraduate enrollment significantly, while focusing the resources that are coming from that undergraduate enrollment to build primarily their graduate programs and their research capacity. So the common experience, and you will all I think, have a sense of this. For most first-year students in university in Canada, what is the typical experience? The typical experience is to find yourself in a class with 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 and more other students, right? And, you know, come the month of April, a student could run into her professor whose course she's been taking since September, run into that professor on the campus, and the professor will not have the slightest idea who they are, right? And much of undergraduate teaching now done in Canada is in fact not done by tenured professors. It's done by contract faculty, by graduate students. So this is where undergraduate education has evolved to in Canada. It's not at all what our model is. Again, the reality for many, many undergraduate students in Canada is when they come to apply to go to grad school, they're often very hard-pressed to find a professor who can write a reference letter for them that says much more than, this student took my course and he did well, but you know, here was his grade. But other than that, they don't really know their students. There is not a direct contact. Well, nothing could be further from the case at our universities. I don't think I've ever heard, I suspect my colleagues haven't either, ever run into a student who said, I couldn't find a professor who knew me well enough to write a reference letter. Our small classes enable our students to have a direct and substantial contact with professors who in most cases are in fact tenured faculty. And our professors know their students by name. And they serve not just as teachers, but as mentors to their students. There are two aspects of the Maple League universities that I'd like to talk about for a moment that both may seem somewhat counterintuitive if you don't know our institutions well. So the first thing is, you might think that the opportunity to develop significant friendships would be greater in the larger universities. You would think perhaps that more classmates should mean more friends. In fact, the opposite is true. The experiences of multiple generations of students at our universities confirm that the number of close friendships that students develop at university is in fact in inverse proportion to the size of the enrollment at the university. The students at the Maple League universities develop intense friendships which last a lifetime. Well, why is that? It's because they share so many classes together. They live in the same residences or apartment buildings. They participate in the same extracurricular activities. And they're present on our campuses not just to attend their classes. They don't come on Tuesday because they have a class at 10 and on Thursday because they have a class at 2. They come and they're there throughout the day. They're there on evenings. They're on weekends. So the university is the center of their community. It's not a place that they go to just to attend class. And by living in these communities, they learn to navigate the challenges and responsibilities of being independent adults who are members of a diverse community. I can share one anecdote. When I first got to Bishop's and I was learning about this, and one of the students said to me, you know, one of the things about Bishop's is you break up with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you're going to run into them the next day on the campus. Everyone's going to know about it, right? So, you know what? You have to know how to navigate different social situations. And I think that's part of what the advantage of living in a residential community is and being part of a community. So because of the depth of those friendships and the diversity of our student bodies, our students develop what I would call a social intelligence and a cultural awareness that prepares them for the globalized world that they're going to be inheriting. So the second counterintuitive point that I wanted to talk about is our students actually have more experience, as a general rule, working with professors on research projects than undergraduates have at the large research-intensive universities. And again, you think, well, that doesn't make sense. You would think it's the places that are doing the most research where there would be the greatest opportunity. But in fact, because we are 98% undergraduate students. Our professors, like professors in all universities, have research projects that they're undertaking, but when they want to have some student support with their projects, they don't have an army of PhD or master students to turn to. So they turn to the undergraduate students in our schools. So our students actually have more concrete experience working on research projects with professors than most students graduating from the large research-intensive universities. And one of the stories we all hear from our grads is that they got to grad school and they found themselves actually better prepared than some of the students from the larger schools because they'd had those experiences. So that's part of the explanation why I think our 4 universities rank in the top 10 in the recent Maclean survey of student satisfaction at Canada's primarily undergraduate universities. It's not the only measure of the quality of a university, but having highly satisfied students, that's a pretty good place to start. Those of you who run any organization, to have a clientele that ranks you amongst the best in your field is a pretty good place to start. And we're very, very fortunate that our students rate their experiences at our 4 institutions so highly. There's another study you may not know about. It's called the National Survey of Student Engagement. It's done by a group of researchers from the University of Indiana. And they've developed a thesis, and that is that there's a direct correlation between the degree of a student's engagement in the academic, extracurricular, and social aspects of their life at university and the quality of education that they actually receive. So the more engaged the student is in class, but in all the other aspects of university life, the better the quality of the education that they're getting. And at our universities, it is, our students, you can be on a sports team, you can sing in the choir, you can work backstage in a play, you can be in a club, you can found a club, you can write for the campus newspaper, you can do a myriad of things while doing a major and a minor at the same time. That's the typical experience of the students at our universities. So again, I guess it was not a surprise to us that in the NESI study, which looks at more than 1,000 universities across North America, that our universities were amongst the highest rank in Canada for student engagement. So despite these wonderful successes and how well we do on these surveys, we still feel that we continue to face a situation where our model of undergraduate education is not sufficiently well known in Canada. And we're facing, I think, a growing challenge because the recognition of the value for young people to go to university is actually declining in Canada. As the demography of Canada changes, for many communities, the notion of sending an 18-year-old away to university is something that they're just not part of their tradition. So we have in fact an enhanced challenge, a more significant challenge to explain the value of our model. And the reality in Canada is that 2/3 of Canadian university students live within 20 kilometers of the university they attend. And only 1 in 10 Canadian students leaves their province to go to university. So university in Canada is largely a place you go to on public transportation, and you go home at night to your family or maybe to an apartment. But that's the experience. We don't have a tradition of people leaving home and going across the country. We think it's one of the great benefits for the young people who come to our institutions, but it's not the norm in Canada. So we have a challenge to help Canadians have a better understanding of our model of undergraduate education. And we think, and the reason we're here in front of you, the 4 of us today, is we believe that we can do a better job at explaining it if we do this together than trying to do it just individually. We know that 4 voices in unison are going to be more effective than each of us individually. So we believe that by working together, we can expand both the breadth and the depth of the educational experiences we offer to our students. Let me give you a couple of examples. We just recently used technology to stream to the other 3 campuses a talk that was given at Mount Allison by Joseph Boyden, as you know, one of Canada's most celebrated authors. We shared a talk at St. FX that was given by a Nobel Prize winner in physics, Art MacDonald. And then just a couple of weeks ago at Bishop's, we had Maureen Dowd, the Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist at the New York Times, came to talk about the U.S. election. We were able to share that talk on all 4 campuses. Next week, for the first time, we are going to be organizing student recruitment events that we're going to do together under the banner of the Maple League. So it's another way in which we think that we can, by working together, spread the message about our model of education more effectively. And we've been doing some other things. We recently submitted a paper together to the Federal Panel on Fundamental Science Review, in which we were able to argue together for more equitable funding for research at undergraduate universities. So that's just a sample of the types of things that we think that we can do together. It's probably evident to you that in the Maple League, we don't believe that bigger is necessarily better. There was a lot of talk, there's a little bit less now, but about these things called MOOCs. Ever heard of that? Massive online open courses, right? So the idea was, you know what, we're all going to take a course from the great professor in whatever discipline. We just sit on our computers and wherever you are around the world, you're going to be able to have access, right? I don't think we ever believed that that was really a model for undergraduate education. So, but we do believe that we can use technology to improve the quality of what we offer. So we think we can use technology to sustain the intimate learning environments that we have, not to diminish them or to destroy them. So what we are doing is we're building on our 4 campuses classrooms which will have cutting-edge video technology, which will allow us to bring our students and faculty together for some quite unique learning experiences. So our small, identical, custom-built classrooms are going to allow students to take courses at the other 3 universities without ever leaving their home campus. This fall, in September, we're testing this. So there are students at Bishop's who this semester are taking a course in Greek that's been given by a professor at Mount Allison. And the technology is quite remarkable. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th class of the year. Robert went into the classroom at Mount A. I walked into the classroom at Bishop's. And I think what gave us the greatest satisfaction was the prof at Mount A knew the names of the 8 Bishop students, right? And was able to turn to them and say, you know, so how would you translate that? Or what does this phrase mean? We found that it is possible to maintain the intimate learning environment even at distance. And our hope is that we're going to be able to do more courses like that. So in the winter semester, there's going to be a course in the Mi'kmaq language that's being given at St. FX, accessible to the students at all 4 universities. There's going to be a course on genocide and justice that's being given at Acadia, again, accessible to students on the 4 campuses. So we can expand the breadth and depth of what we offer while at the same time maintaining the intimate learning environments that are so unique to our universities. Next summer, we are going to offer a course on each of the 4 campuses, a different course on each of the 4 campuses, and encourage students from, again, the other 3 to actually be physically present on the other campus. Let me give you a couple of illustrations. So we have a fabulous professor of English. She's passionate about Shakespeare. So she's decided she's going to put on a course where they're going to be studying 4 plays. And the 4 of the plays that are going to be performed at Stratford in the next season. So she has students already lined up from all 4 universities. They're going to come to Bishop's. They're going to study the 4 plays together. And then they're going to get on a bus and they're going to go and spend a couple of days in Stratford seeing the plays, meeting the actors, the directors, and what have you. So we probably couldn't afford to put that course on if it was just for the Bishop students. There wouldn't be enough of them. But by doing this together, we're going to have a critical mass that will allow us to support it. There's going to be a course on the ecology of the Bay of Fundy and northeastern Nova Scotia, so a biology field course that's going to be given jointly by Acadia and St. FX. There's going to be opportunity from the students from our 4 schools to go to St. FX next summer and take a course in Buddhism and spend some time at a Buddhist monastery in Cape Breton. So those, again, just some of the early ideas that this alliance is starting to identify of things that we can do together. Now, the students from the 4 universities have already had a number of interesting opportunities. St. FX, which is a particular expertise in leadership, put on a conference on student leadership, and the students from the 4 universities attended. Acadia hosted a conference on undergraduates' involvement with research. Mount A hosted a conference on how can upper year university students participate in the education process for first-year university students. So is there a way that undergrads can play a bit the role that one thinks of graduate students being able to play, so to be able to help their younger colleagues. At Bishop's, we've been hosting a debating and business competition for the 4 schools. What's been exciting is that every time we do something, it leads to something else. Every time we get some of our students together, our faculty together, our staff together, our volunteer leaders together, there are new ideas that emerge in a whole variety of interesting and different ways. Faculty members in the same discipline are connecting with each other. And it's fun to see that the math professor at St. FX now has a colleague with the math professor at Acadia, and they can talk about how they address a certain problem and how they teach. There's not that much that happens in universities where colleagues get to help each other because we're so hierarchical. But when you're dealing with someone in the same discipline but in another institution, you can be much more forthright about, I'm struggling with this, how do you deal with it? So we're creating connections across faculty members. Our student services are working together to look at best practices about how one addresses issues of mental health and sexual assault and alcohol and drug abuse. Our student associations are starting to collaborate together. Our administrators are talking to each other about how to learn from each other and to be more efficient and effective in how they administer. So there's a real sense of excitement around these connections being made and the ideas that are emerging. So I'm going to conclude. I want to just before I do that, talk to you a little bit about our name. So as I mentioned, when we formed this alliance 3 years ago, we actually considered using the name that we've just adopted as of last night, the Maple League. But we were a little bit nervous that we might be seen to be a little bit pretentious and maybe slightly ambitious to be choosing that name when we hadn't really accomplished very much. So we started with the not exactly inspiring name of U4. But here we are 3 years later, and with the record of what we've done and what we've accomplished, we're feeling much more comfortable that we've kind of grown into this name that we would have liked to have adopted from the beginning. Now, obviously it's a nod to the Ivy League. We don't pretend to be the equivalent of the Ivy League universities, but we do share their same values and their same determination to be the very best in undergraduate education. The model of the small residential undergraduate university is actually very rare in Canada, but it's prevalent and highly regarded in the United States. You'll recognize some of these names: Amherst, Bowdoin, Middlebury, Swarthmore, Wellesley, Williams. Those are all amongst the most regarded universities in the United States. So we actually believe that Canada needs more universities like these. Sometimes I say that Bishop's is Canada's westernmost small liberal arts residential university, right? But I should say the American schools I just mentioned, as you probably know, they're all private universities. And the Maple League universities were all public institutions. So we are elite undergraduate institutions, but we're not institutions for the elite. We're public universities. We're committed to providing the best possible education for undergraduates from across Canada and around the world. The 4 Maple League universities, you know, we've been providing this model of education for more than 160 years. So we're older than Canada. And we have a long history of students coming to our universities from small towns and big cities across the country. And our graduates have contributed to virtually every aspect of Canadian society. The universities of the Maple League have produced distinguished academics, Rhodes Scholars, university presidents. I don't know why anyone would want to do that, but university presidents, premiers, a prime minister, business leaders, journalists, artists, performers, professional athletes. So we actually really do believe that we offer the best undergraduate experiences in Canada, but we're determined to get even better. And in a world, I think we're probably all feeling this, became even more complex this week. There is a compelling need for universities which are committed to critical thinking, to respective dialogue, and to constructive communication. So we're confident that this alliance that we've created is going to continue to grow to the benefit of our students and to the benefit of higher education in Canada. We believe that Acadia and Bishops and Mount Allison and St. FX, the universities of the Maple League, will continue to light the way for undergraduate education in Canada. So on behalf of my colleagues, I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell you about who we are, about what we're hoping to achieve, and to let us share with you our ambitions and aspirations. And we would very much look forward to having a dialogue with you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael. And as I said at the outset, there are Q&A cards if you'd like to fill them out, or if you'd like to stand and ask a question. Any of the 4 would be happy to take your questions. But I have received a few. And Michael, you can probably pass the baton now to others. Okay. So will each of you develop a core competency to differentiate yourselves, i.e., one will focus on science, the other on arts?
Well, I hope the answer to that, at least in our case, I'm sure the answer to that is an emphatic no. I actually think that would be the wrong thing to do. The model that we have is founded on the principle of, if you will, doing a first-rate degree. Almost doesn't matter what discipline you do that degree in, but the nature of our institutions, much like schools on the same model in the U.S., is to offer a wide spectrum of undergraduate education. I'll give you a tangible example of, again, why I think that wouldn't be a good strategy. Last year, 35% of Acadia's graduates, as they crossed the stage, graduated in a major that was different than they enrolled in. And we think that's a good thing, because they had the opportunity to explore, as 18 to 22-year-olds, what was their passion, what did they want to do in their careers. And if you specialize in one area or another, you preclude that opportunity that I think rests at the core of a liberal education.
Okay. Sure.
Go ahead, Robert. No? So one of the things I think that distinguishes our universities is that, you know, in the larger universities, students and faculty tend to spend time with student and faculty in the same discipline as themselves, right? So the history faculty hangs together and the law faculty hangs together. The advantage of our experience is, both for our students and for our faculty, because we are smaller, They're interacting all the time with people whose academic discipline is different than their own. And I believe that innovation is going to come from people who are able to take ideas from one discipline and another one, mash them together. That's where the creativity is going to come from. So I think it is important that, yes, we will develop some specialties in terms of like the summer courses we talked about, but overall, I'm with Ray. I think it is important that we continue to offer the full breadth of the undergraduate educations we're offering now.
Okay, we've got universal agreement on this one. So I'm going to turn to the right hand of the stage for the next question, which is, in what ways will the Maple League be informing potential students about the opportunities it offers?
Well, in the first instance, we're branding together into a concept. We have a website. We have we're going on the road, as Michael mentioned in his talks. We are going to go out to recruit students and to bring the message of our style of education right across Canada. In the coming week, we're going to be in Toronto doing this, Vancouver, Calgary. We'll do it in the Maritimes, in Ottawa, Montreal as well. And so the idea is to increase the number of students and parents and society that recognize the value and difference of our approach. And then once they express some sort of interest to us, then we put on our competitive hats, and Kent and I and others then go out and make the case for our particular schools, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea is to bring a wider recognition, and we're going to work through that through various marketing techniques, advertising techniques, social media, websites, and on-the-road activities.
Great. So I agree fully with Robert. So let me expand on it a little bit. All of us have an area of research when you're a university president. Mine happens to be a simple question of what do great universities do differently than other universities? And that question has taken me around the world, through Asia and Africa, the Middle East, throughout North America, Latin America. And I can tell you this with 100% certainty, that there's not many of these institutions that exist anymore, that somehow we have this warped notion that greatness comes through growth. So I see celebrations if we're 20,000 or 40,000 or 80,000 students, and we're putting, it's higher education's dirty little secret, that we're putting 17 and 18 and 19-year-olds in classes of 500, 800, 1,000 students, and somehow as educators, we think that some great learning is taking place. In my view, if you're not in the front row of those classes, I call that distance education. And so we have a powerful story to tell, that it's not for everyone. When you're on our campuses, these 4 people know who you are. Your faculty know who you are. They're full-time faculty. They're not TAs or doctoral students. You cannot hide when you're at Bishop's, Acadia, Mount Allison, or St. FX. And that's not for everybody, because some students want to be hide and be anonymous. And so we think we have a powerful story. We'll use social platforms to go out and tell our story. All of us have extremely strong brands. We are national universities, as Michael said. We're in many cases, more than half of our students come from outside the province. So that branding, that recognition will continue, and I think that this is all about growing awareness, growing the pie, not slicing it up, because sooner or later, parents and advisors are going to say, maybe when you're 17 or 18-year-old, there's a different model you want to consider, and I think we'll be extremely successful in telling that story as a collective. We'll still look forward to beating Mount Allison in football on Saturday, but other than that, right, Robert?
So here's a question that I could have written, but I didn't. Lots of students from Ontario love the East Coast undergraduate experience, but they have trouble finding jobs on the East Coast or back in Ontario. What are you doing to integrate formal education with career counseling and marketing to businesses both on the East Coast and in Central Canada?
I'll take a crack at that. You're absolutely correct, and actually we have some recent data on this, and extends not just from students from elsewhere in Canada, but international students as well. When surveyed, if there was an opportunity for them to stay in any one of our communities, would they choose to do so, and it's 80+% that say yes, they would. So tremendous opportunity. Frankly, at least in my province, it's been the absence of the economic options for them to have employment afterwards. But we're starting to see some real changes in government policy that I think will be helpful. So there's two parts. One that we can do as institutions. So we've broadened our cooperative education offerings. You can now do co-op right across our spectrum of degrees, including in our BA. So we have more students involved in that kind of practical experience while they're there, which increases their attachment to local businesses and organizations. On the government side, Nova Scotia has started a graduate to opportunities option that provides a pathway and some incentive for employers to hire recent grads, because we're realizing as a province we actually need those students that come to study in our province to actually stay and be productive members of our society after they've graduated. So I think whoever posed the question is in a very rich area. It's an area that we haven't had the success, frankly, and this is less about us as institutions and more as jurisdictions. We haven't been as successful as we need to be. I think we're starting to see that needle move in the right direction.
Okay. Anybody like to add? Okay. So, on behalf of the Canadian Club, I want to thank you all for your passion and commitment to higher education, and for Michael for doing such a great job as your chief spokesperson. Your collective experience has been brought to bear on post-secondary education in meaningful and tangible ways. Your focus on resetting the undergraduate experience in Canada exemplifies just how in touch you are with your students and the need to challenge critical thinking in your graduates. We're impressed with the boldness of your plan to transform teaching, learning, and research. As you mentioned, Michael, today's dynamic learning environment is fluid, with technology influencing traditional approaches to the classroom. The Maple League's focus on creating intimate and dynamic teaching and learning environments is a breath of fresh air. Thank you for collaborating and for coming together in what has traditionally been a highly competitive and highly protective space. We want to wish you all the collective and individual success in your common objective of providing the best undergraduate education possible. This concludes our program today. I'd like to thank mediaevents.ca, Canada's online event space, and VVC for live streaming today's event. To learn more about the club, please visit us at canadianclub.org. Thanks to everybody for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at another of our events in the near future. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.